Ancient prayers might seem outdated, but what if I told you there's a 1,500 years Irish protection prayer that's essentially the world's first self-help manifesto?
That's quite a bold claim. What makes this particular prayer so special?
Well, it's called St. Patrick's Breastplate, written supposedly in 433 AD, and what's fascinating is how it systematically builds mental and spiritual resilience. Think of it as an ancient psychological armor-building exercise.
So it's like a medieval mindfulness practice?
That's actually a really good comparison. The prayer starts with this powerful declaration, "I arise today," and then methodically constructs what you might call a force field of protection, drawing strength from everything from cosmic forces to natural elements.
That's really interesting. How exactly does it build this protection?
Well, it's like creating layers of armor. First, it invokes divine power through the Trinity, then draws strength from Christ's life events, then moves to celestial beings, cherubim, angels, archangels, and then, this is where it gets really interesting. It taps into natural elements like the sun's light, the moon's radiance, even the stability of rocks.
So it's essentially combining spiritual and natural power sources. That's pretty comprehensive for something written in the 5th century.
Exactly. And here's what's really fascinating. It then moves into this incredibly personal section where it calls for specific divine interventions. God's strength to pilot, wisdom to guide, eye to look ahead, ear to hear. It's like creating this complete divine security system.
That reminds me of modern visualization techniques, but this seems so much more detailed.
Right. And what's really powerful is how it addresses specific threats. Where we might worry about anxiety or depression today, it listed things like snares of devils and spells of witches. Different language, but essentially the same human vulnerabilities.
Well, that's a fascinating parallel. How do people use this prayer in modern times?
So many people focus on what's called the Christ Shield section. These 15 lines that create this complete sphere of protection. Christ with me, Christ before me, Christ behind me, and so on. It's become almost like a meditation mantra.
That makes sense. It sounds like it could be really grounding in times of stress.
You know what's really interesting? This prayer actually connects to other religious traditions too. Like when St. Paul wrote about the armor of God in Ephesians, he was expressing a similar concept of spiritual protection.
That's quite profound how these ideas of protection and strength cross different traditions and time periods.
And here's what I think makes it so relevant today. It acknowledges both human vulnerability and strength simultaneously. Like you're basically saying, I need protection, while also claiming the power of the entire universe as your shield.
That's a beautiful paradox, finding strength through acknowledging our need for protection.
Exactly, and maybe that's why it survived for over 1,500 years. Whether you're facing physical dangers like St. Patrick did, or modern challenges like burnout and anxiety, it offers this framework for finding strength beyond yourself.
So it's really more than just a prayer. It's like an ancient template for building resilience.
And that might be its most powerful lesson for us today, that true strength isn't about being invulnerable, but about knowing how to gather and channel resources beyond ourselves when we need them most.
I arise today through a mighty strength, the invocation of the Trinity, through a belief in the threeness, through confession of the oneness of the Creator of creation. I arise today through the strength of Christ's birth and his baptism, through the strength of his crucifixion and his burial, through the strength of his resurrection and his ascension, through the strength of his descent for the judgment of doom. I arise today through the strength of the love of cherubim, in obedience of angels, in service of archangels, in the hope of resurrection, to meet with reward, in the prayers of patriarchs, in preachings of the apostles, in faiths of confessors, in innocence of virgins, in deeds of righteous men. I arise today through the strength of heaven, light of the sun, splendor of fire, speed of lightning, swiftness of the wind, depth of the sea, stability of the earth, firmness of the rock. I arise today through God's strength to pilot me, God's might to uphold me, God's wisdom to guide me, God's eye to look before me, God's ear to hear me, God's word to speak for me, God's hand to guard me, God's way to lie before me, God's shield to protect me, God's hosts to save me from snares of the devil, from temptations of vices, from everyone who desires me ill, afar and anear, alone or in a multitude. I summon today all these powers between me and evil, against every cruel, merciless power that opposes my body and soul, against incantations of false prophets, against black laws of pagandum, against false laws of heretics, against craft of idolatry, against spells of women and smiths and wizards, against every knowledge that corrupts man's body and soul. Christ, shield me today against poison, against burning, against drowning, against wounding, so that reward may come to me in abundance. Christ with me, Christ before me, Christ behind me, Christ in me, Christ beneath me, Christ above me, Christ on my right, Christ on my left, Christ when I lie down, Christ when I sit down, Christ in the heart of every man who thinks of me, Christ in the mouth of every man who speaks of me, Christ in the eye that sees me, Christ in the ear that hears me. I arise today through a mighty strength, the invocation of the Trinity, through a belief in the threeness, through a confession of the oneness of the Creator of creation. St. Patrick, Orchestra 377.